the top.
All right, Slam Jammers, welcome to 2025. I've got a special guest ahead of a couple of the drafts, and we're going to be kicking things off with the NPL draft. I'm sitting across the table from Ben Costin, coach extraordinaire, who's done some fabulous things in 2024. Welcome, Ben.
Cheers, thanks for having me.
Good to have you, mate, and in the studio too. So
I'm
hoping you're feeling special.
Yeah, better than last
You've been
time.
talked about in this room quite often, actually.
I fan of the show.
I love it, mate. Well, obviously, I mentioned before you've been doing a lot of coaching in 2024. You obviously also have a blog, and I miss the blogs, mate. I got to say, you were very prevalent early on in the year, but since I reckon the coaching's become way more serious for you, you're not wanting to give away too many ideas. Am I onto something there?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like giving away too many ideas. I don't think it was like too in depth. But I just felt like it was a little bit like too close to it. And if I felt like if I had a really successful team, even if I was being honest, it wouldn't be like taken the right way. It would be a little bit biased or whatever like that. And I just felt just a little too close to it.
And we're going to be talking about the NPL. You're wearing the iguanas, the extinct iguanas, though.
The extinct iguanas. Hey.
What do you think of all the new names?
They're definitely a step up. I reckon like 75, 80% of them I'm pretty happy with. I think it's definitely a step up. There's some that I'm like,
Yeah.
I think the Tide look is pretty cool. There's a cool little logo on that one, and the opals I think are pretty cool as well.
I heard an interesting little theory this morning that maybe the Roos were after a player, and maybe the Burras maybe.
The Burras and the Kangaroos.
It could have been something.
Yeah.
Well, mate, your blog, it's known for not pulling any punches. So do you think your coaching style reflects that same energy?
I think like if you're not like honest and like open about stuff, it's hard to kind of make changes and be realistic and like get the right stuff done. Like I approach things, I want to be honest, I want to be fair. Like if I'm criticizing, I also want to like give props. So like I think if you'll like have good awareness and you try and be fair, I think that's kind of how I approach things.
And moving on to, I guess, the talent pool and draft strategy in NPL for 2025, at this point, are you going to be coaching a particular team?
I will be coaching one of two teams.
Okay.
And it actually hasn't been decided yet.
And will it be decided, do you assume, before Monday? We're recording this on Friday.
Yeah. So it'll definitely be
Monday.
It honestly probably will be decided tonight.
Okay.
So that there's
I wish
a
we
little
had
bit
the
of
scoop.
Yeah. Sorry. I mean,
is it your call? Is it going to be your call?
I mean, it's ultimately my call, but we're kind of at a point where both are happy with kind of the agreement, and I'd feel bad about like kind of pushing for more than that.
Yep.
So it's more just like deciding how we want to do it. Do we want to do it a little bit of a fun way? Like what makes the most sense? What's the fairest? Because I coach both athletes, so it's hard to choose.
Just not beat around the bush anymore.
Yeah,
Joey and Danny. We're talking about Joey and Danny.
Joey and Danny. And I mean, like, I'd love to coach both teams, but I just don't think it's possible.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll try and figure it out and see what will happen.
All right. Well, we're going to be interesting to see some of your answers because right now you're unencumbered as far as I'm concerned.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts on the depth and diversity of talent in this year's NPL draft pool?
Yeah, so the short answer is the depth is going to be, or I guess like the talent is going to be higher than it was the last season. Pretty significant jump just going from, I guess, 36 players down to 24 players in each of the states. So you're cutting a few players and then you're adding some players onto the top. You've got a few more like foreign players coming over possibly, and then obviously like some really high level talent that's jumped in there as well. So the overall level is going to be much higher, I think.
So when you talk about decreasing from 36 players to 24 players, that's because we're going from 6 players per team to 4?
Correct. Yeah.
And the same format, or what can you tell us about the format?
Yeah, so like the format is loosely the same, but how it correlates is a more doubles focus. Essentially, because the singles, there's no longer 3 rubbers, there's only 2, and so say if there's a 1-1, you would cancel each other out, and there'd be no result for the singles. So to get a result for the singles, you need to win 2. whereas each doubles match, because they continue on, they're always worth one. So I think there's a little bit more doubles focus, which I think was a big critique from a lot of players for NPL. But they still want to push singles and the athleticism and that sort of stuff. So I really like that they're trying to do their own thing. They're listening to feedback, even if they're not always acting on it. But they're open to trying new things, and I think it's good.
And who do you think are the standout players in this year's NPL draft pool?
In the draft pool, I mean the obvious one is Summer Dalabona.
Yeah,
that's the
huge
absolute
signing for them.
Absolute standout.
No pun intended.
Yeah, no pun intended. She incredible. Won more MLPs than any other player. I think she's at 5, which is just out of control considering there's only been 9. Huge. In New South Wales, you've got Mickey Hayat, obviously another huge one. And then in Victoria, you've got a couple of international players. And I know just recently, because the draft closed last night, there's been another couple that have flooded in. But I know Rob Nunnery was on there, but I think he might be withdrawing. So Nunnery would be an obvious first pick situation. But yeah, I think there's a few extra players that I haven't seen because they've just snuck in on the last day.
It's been really interesting to kind of watch the NPL evolve over the last couple of years, because it's very much, it's a regional focused tournaments, but also, drawing from the players within those regions. Now we're actually talking about players coming from overseas to play, Molly O'Donoghue, for instance, who's a captain for this season. So I guess, things are starting to really heat up over in NPL.
Yeah, definitely. So I think like the partnership with PWR is also a part of that. So they'll give it more of a broader reach. But I think they're still predominantly focused on Australia, looking to put more venues and stuff into Australia, at least into the key locations, so they can keep running the league and kind of build everything. And
more venues was on my wish list for 2025, Ben. So
it would be amazing.
I'm all about that.
Amazing.
Let's talk about team building. So I want to explore your approach to player selection and team dynamics. So what's your philosophy when it comes to building a strong NPL team?
So with any draft, any competition, whether it's NPL, MLP, I think you need to understand the rules. I think you need to understand the format, and you kind of work backwards from that. So what constitutes like a win in terms of like in each individual match? So say like, or in both situations, you need to get 3 points, and there's 4 of the 4 points available, and then there's a tiebreaker if it's at 2-2. So generally, you're either looking to have a really strong attempt at like 2 and then play for the tiebreaker, although the tiebreaker is a little bit harder to plan for in NPL than it is in, say, MLP. So I think that's slightly risky. But because there's more disciplines incorporated in NPL, there's more variety, and it's kind of hard to kind of attack or like really invest your draft into all 5. It's 5 different categories, because you've got the women's doubles, men's doubles, both singles, and the mix. So you've got 5 categories, whereas MLP, you're only really looking at 3, and then the singles is like the icing on the top. So you kind of split further there. So I think you can only really, realistically, with like how the draft works, only focus on 3, and then you've probably got 1 week 1. Is probably, because it's a give and take situation with the draft.
So the NPL places, I guess, a strong emphasis on singles matches. How does this format influence your strategy for drafting players, and does it make coaching in the NPL uniquely challenging compared to MLP?
I think it affects the draft more than anything. I don't think it really changes like coaching so much. I think the thing that changes for like a coaching perspective is in NPL you really need to start well. So like having a good plan, having like good energy to start is very important, and like running on momentum and then getting onto your next team that's coming in if it's one of the doubles matches. So like really starting well, whereas like comparison with the MLP, it's all about finishing well. Like most matches will get to 15 all, get to 18 all, and then having like really good like communication or really solid ideas that you've maybe found through the match, or you had pre-match or something like that. You find something at the end that you feel really confident in, and then execute right at the end. So, I mean, if you saw, there's something I believe in a lot is like taking timeouts on serve, getting the ideas right, and then really trying to execute just to kind of break the power of the freeze in MLP.
And I guess some predictions, bold opinions, which you're known for, and things to watch out for in the league. If you could make one change to improve the NPL, what would it be?
So in terms of the NPL league, I think one thing I would like to change is maybe have at least one other event that you're kind of building for. Instead of having like just the finals, because I feel like you play the 5 rounds, the 10 matches, and then you go to Melbourne and it's a completely different beast. And it's hard to like prepare for that. So if like there was like a mid-season tournament or something, so you could like kind of get a feel how like, because the rounds, they don't feel like there's any pressure, or the pressure in comparison is like 500% less. So like there's a little bit of pressure, you're playing competitively, blah, blah. But like if you're like already got your ticket to Melbourne, you've got a good team, you're pretty comfortable. But then you get to Melbourne, that's where all the marbles are at. So I think like having one other tournament or something like that would be good.
This is where we'd bring together.
Yeah, and I think like you say, like you even bring all 18 teams if it's possible. I don't know, like maybe the money's not there for that yet, but it's a dream, and I think you'd get more interstate interaction, and it wouldn't just be like the top teams in Melbourne, and then still having the finals would be great. But just like having something you could kind of test yourself before you go, I think would be really interesting.
Okay, yeah, I like it. And which players in this year's NPL draft do you think have the potential to surprise everyone?
Surprise. I don't really want to give away too many of like the ones that are kind of hidden, because I think like the obvious ones, like everyone's kind of going to get, but the ones that kind of have some like potential, you're like, oh, I'd really like to get them at like a sneaky position, I don't really want to give away. I will say like in New South Wales though, like and Victoria, there seems to be a lot more kind of like young talent or like tennis talent, whereas in Queensland it seems a little bit more stagnant on that end, which makes like, as a coach, I'd love to have a developing player that I could kind of sneak in and work with and try and bring through. But Victoria and New South Wales, there seems to be like the Jovic sisters. Interested to see how they go.
And there can only be one answer here, but I'm really interested to see if you might throw someone off the scent here. Who's going to be the number 1 pick in Queensland?
Oh, yeah, it won't be Summer. It'll be someone that's not Summer.
Come on.
Sure, no, it's Summer, and it's like
it has to be Summer, right?
Yeah.
Well, Joey's got pick 2, Danny's got pick 5, so I mean, I guess you can give that one away.
I mean, to be honest, even though like it'd be great to have her on one of those 2 teams, I think for the league, I think it's a better situation that didn't happen.
Yeah, I agree. Well, mate, your final thoughts on the draft and what excites you most about the season. So, what should fans look forward to?
Yeah, I think the level of singles, I think even shown this last year, like the level of singles is really improved, and like actually playing matches is important for that level. So I think look for that to improve. It's not as important, but I think just with the level of players that's going to be in there playing singles week in, week out, that's going to really rise. And I think look for some real hero performances from some really top level athletes that are maybe in a class of their own there. And you might see some big comebacks, you might see some big play, just maybe taking lots of court, seeing who can really bring their team to the finals. And then in the finals, I think the energy in the finals it's up there. It's up there. There feels like there's a lot on the line. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of bodies in that facility at that time. So I think the finals is pretty exciting, and it'll be even better this time.
I guess it's going to be Brumbies or Opals.
Brumbies or Opals.
So I'm going to look forward to seeing maybe tomorrow morning your announcement there. So thanks for talking to us about NPL, mate. Good luck in the upcoming season, and
that should be fun.
It's going to be a good one.